That bit of dragon blood in my veins came in well, as it made me a distant relation to the Targaryen dynasty blood of my long-lost ancestor, Orys.
Hello and welcome to Lord of Thrones. Today, we will be looking at a character who is both fascinating and shrouded in mystery, Orys Baratheon, the founder of House Baratheon and rumored half-brother of Aegon Targaryen, who would later become the first hand of the king, and Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, a man of many firsts and a powerful warrior, who assisted his half-siblings conquer the Seven Kingdoms and forge the Iron Throne. While they flew their dragons in the skies, Orys was commanding the troops on the ground. He would later become a decorated warrior, being Aegon's right-hand man and friend, who would later encounter his own tragedy and struggles, whose legacy and efforts would forever intertwine Houses Targaryen and Baratheon for generations. So, join me today and let us discover the history of this character. So to start, not much is known about Orys Baratheon, but it is believed he was born in, or before 20 AC. He was the rumored bastard half-brother of Aegon the Conqueror by their father Aegon Targaryen, Lord of Dragonstone. However, it is widely accepted that he was born of bastardry to House Targaryen. Even Jaehaerys, the first Targaryen, believed it an open secret that Orys was Aeryn's bastard son, a dragon seed of House Targaryen. However, no one knew about Orys' mother or the circumstances leading to his birth, not even rumors such as whether he was conceived as a product of the First Night, which was common practice for Targaryens at the time, or a youthful dalliance by Aegon. Orys had black hair and black eyes, as well as a black beard, with most of these strong features becoming common in his descendants. Growing up at Dragonstone, he was Aegon's best friend. From childhood to adulthood, Aegon considered Orys his only true friend, and this would show throughout their lives, as when Aegon became Lord of Dragonstone after Lord Aeryn's death, Orys rose to be his most trusted advisor and right-hand man. He also took part in the commanding of the Dragonstone garrison. Just before Aegon's conquest, Harren the Black of House Hor, the king of the Isles and the Rivers, nearing completion of his massive castle, Harrenhal, it is said he was still looking for more conquests to add to his already huge realm. Argilac Durrandon, the last Storm King, had grown worried of Harren, as over many generations the Storm King's domain, which once covered most of the eastern part of Westeros, had greatly reduced in size and power by his rule, and so proposed an alliance with Aegon. It is believed he wanted to create a buffer zone between his kingdom and Harren's, as already he had the Kingdom of the Reach to the west and Dorne in the south. Thus he offered the hand of his maiden daughter, Argella, in marriage as well as dowry lands, though much of the lands were in fact in the possession of Harren the Black ironically. Ultimately, Aegon refused as he already had two sister wives, and instead requested significantly more land and offered to seal the pact by wedding Orys to Argilac's daughter and only child. The Storm King angrily rejected these terms, as he believed Orys being a base-born bastard would dishonor his daughter, and took this as a grave insult, resulting in him cutting the hands of the envoy off with a message stating,
"These are the only hands your bastard shall have of me,"
resulting in Aegon, Lord of Dragonstone, calling his banners, taking counsel with them and his sisters. After 6 days of consulting, Aegon sent ravens to the rulers of the Seven Kingdoms and informed them that there would only be one king in Westeros, thus beginning Aegon's conquest. During the first battle, Orys commanded on the ground, defeating Lords Mootton and Darklyn. After Aegon's coronation at Egonfort, as he was being celebrated, Aegon named his loyal friends and allies to a small council and proclaimed his half-brother and most loyal friend, Orys, to be his shield, his stalwart, and his strong right hand, and lead this council, thus essentially becoming the first hand of the king, truly displaying how strongly Aegon felt about Orys. While Aegon dealt with Harrenhal, Orys and Queen Rhaenys with her dragon Meraxes crossed Blackwater Rush with the goal of capturing Storm's End, taking the greater part of Aegon's host with them. While King Argilac gathered his banners, Lords Errol, Fell and Buckler, bannermen of the Storm King, surprised Orys' army, having greater knowledge of their lands, resulting in them cutting down more than 1,000 men before retreating back into the trees. Rhaenys thus unleashed unleashed Meraxes and set the forest ablaze. Hearing of the burning of Harrenhal, Argilac knew that the formidable walls of Storm's End would not protect him from dragonfire. Thus, as his nickname suggests, he arrogantly rode out with his army for open battle to rather win or die with sword in hand than be cooked in his castle like Harren the Black. With the help of Renly's dragon, Orys knew the Storm King was on his way ready for battle. Knowing how fast Argilac's army rode and their numbers, Orys took the high ground on the hills south of Bronze Gate, awaiting the Stormlanders. When the two armies met on the battlefield, a storm broke out, with the rain blowing against the Targaryen host. Argilac, knowing he had almost twice as many men as the Targaryens and 4 times as many knights and heavy horses, decided to press the attack. Initially, the battle had not been favorable for the Stormlanders due to the weather and terrain. The Stormlanders would eventually manage to break through the Baratheon center in a fierce battle in the grisly, stormy conditions, only to be engulfed by dragon flames. With Meraxes and Renly's turning the battle into chaos, Argilac's personal guard were burned by dragon flame, and the Storm King was flung from his horse in the confusion. While on foot, Argilac slew 6 men and held off another 6, truly showing his might as the last Storm King. As Orys rode down the hill and dismounted, he ordered his men to stand aside. He then gave Argilac a chance to yield. However, a proud and arrogant man, he cursed Orys and chose to fight instead. While an elderly man, Argilac was no slouch himself, as the Storm Kings were traditionally great warriors, with Argilac having already turned back a Dornish invasion when he was just a boy. The two warriors would engage in single combat, with everything on the line, resulting in both combatants taking a wound. But soon Argilac would get his wish and die fighting, ending the reign of the Storm Kings. The loss of their king made the Stormlanders lose their edge, choosing to either surrender or flee. After the battle, Argella Durrandon, the daughter of Argilac, declared herself the Storm Queen, and inheriting the stubbornness of her father, she continued to hold Storm's End and declared Orys would only win bones, blood, and ashes. Not sharing the same sentiment, her household turned against her to avoid the same fate of Harrenhal. Like cowards, they delivered her to Orys that same night, naked and chained. However, he instead covered her with his cloak and treated her with kindness and honor. Aegon would reward him with the lands and riches of Storm's End and named him the first Lord Paramount of the Stormlands. And just like that, he moved from being a base-born bastard to a Lord Paramount of one of the great houses of the 7 kingdoms, with none even daring to suggest that he was unworthy of these honors. He took Argella as his wife, and to honor Argilac's valor and might, he adopted the stag banner, honors and words of the Durrandons. Ours is the fury, formerly forming House Baratheon. 4 years after the conquest, Orys would again join King Aegon I in the First Dornish War in 4 AC, leading an assault on the Boneway with 1,000 picked knights. His horses struggled up the twisty paths, while his knights were hit with boulders from above, the work of defenders the Stormlanders never saw. The crafty Dornishmen launched a night raid, raining arrows, rocks, and spears from above as the Stormlanders crossed a bridge. The bodies of the invading army blocked the Boneway from both ends, and when Lord Orys ordered his men to fall back, a triggered rockfall cut off their retreat. With no way forward or back, the Stormlanders were massacred, except for Orys and a few other lords to be ransomed. However, Orys and his bannermen found themselves the captives of the Will of Will, the savage mountain lord called the Widow Lover. Unfortunately, Orys would remain Will's captive for years, until Aegon agreed to pay ransom for him and his men for each man's weight in gold. However, when the captives were freed, their sword hands chopped off on the command of Will so they could not be used again against Dorne. It is said that, after the release of Orys and the other lords, the war entered a new stage, as Aegon the Conqueror was now intent on revenge, and in retaliation mounted Balerion the Black Dread and burned Will's and his seat to rubble, although he would escape. Sadly, after this, Orys would be known as Orys the One-Handed, which is ironic and somewhat metaphoric, as he had been the strong right hand of the king and now had his sword hand chopped off. After this, Orys was said to have become crabbed and bitter, so he resigned his hand and returned to the Stormlands. He became obsessed with vengeance against the Dornish, especially House Will, whose lord had removed his hand. When Princess Dyria Martell came to King's Landing to provide peace terms, Lord Orys argued for sending the princess back to her father Nymer, the Prince of Dorne, without a hand. However, years later, Orys would receive an opportunity for vengeance against the Wills in the Second Dornish War during the early reign of Aegon's son, King Aenys the First Targaryen. In 37 AC, a Dornish outlaw known as the Vulture King led a huge army to reave the lands north of the Red Mountains, attacking Blackhaven and Nightsong. The Vulture King split his host, having one half led by Lord Walter Will to besiege Stonehelm. The Lord of Storm's End, eager for revenge against the Dornish, led his forces from Storm's End one last time to participate in the Vulture Hunt. While Will's host sat besieging Stonehelm, Orys' forces crushed the Dornishmen beneath the walls of the castle. Lord Walter Will, the son of the widow lover, was brought to Orys, wounded but alive. Lord Orys, in true Baratheon fashion, chopped off Walter's sword hand, then his other hand, followed by both feet, which he referred to as interest on a debt, for exacting his vengeance. On his trip home to Storm's End, Orys died of the wounds he had taken in the battle. Orys died content, according to his son, smiling at the rotten hands and feet dangling in his tent. Orys had at least 2 children, Davos and Sir Raymond Baratheon, who would continue his line up until the events of the War of the Usurper, where his descendant Robert Baratheon would end the rule of House Targaryen and claim the throne for his own through conquest and a blood claim through his grandmother, Princess Rhael Targaryen, daughter of Aegon V Targaryen and Queen Betha Blackwood, this marking a new era of Baratheon rule in the Seven Kingdoms, although still technically ruled by the blood of House Targaryen through male line descent from Aerion Targaryen.